Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow.
All right, welcome to The Sideshow. Today, Mike is going to be taking the lead, so why don't you let everybody know what we're going to be talking about today?
Thanks, Mark. Today, I am going to be talking about aside from one of my favorite albums, one of my favorite bands, really, when you get down to it. We're going to be talking about Dire Straits Making Movies, side one. Dire Straits kind of broke on the scene in 1978. Their first album, just called Dire Straits, eponymously titled, had a massive hit with the song Sultans of Swing, which became, after that album's release, it was released as a single, became, ubiquitous on the radio at that time. And it had a unique sound to it. The sound of the guitar and the sound of Mark Knopfler, the lead guitarist and lead vocalist of the band. It had a new, different, unique sound that had, it was sort of a rootsy, it wasn't sort of new wave, even though that was the era that it came out in. It was more rootsy in sound, but it had that sort of fresh, this is something, maybe it's not new, but it's fresh. It's got some vitality to it. And because of the success of that single, primarily, I believe the band got big, and it got popular in the United States. The band is from England, but they became basically an internationally successful band. The lead guitarist and lead singer of the band, Mark Knopfler, his brother was originally in the band. David Knopfler was his name. The Knopflers grew up in northern England. I believe Mark Knopfler was born in Glasgow in Scotland, but as a child moved to the town of Blyth. I believe that's pronounced proper, Blyth, which is on the North Sea, not that far from Newcastle, in northern England. And he played music from a young age, but he went to college. I believe he has an English degree from, it might be Leeds University in England, and may have worked as a teacher for some period of time.
I think he was when they before the band started to grow.
So he was
English teacher.
He was an educated person, literate person, and ended up finding his way down to London. And there's people can check it out on the internet and learn more. But Dire Straits came together, I believe, performing in the London area. And John Illsley was eventually became the bass player, and Pick Withers is the name of the drummer. And so they were very successful with their first album. The next year, in 1978, came out with their second album called Communique. It was recorded in the Bahamas. There's a recording studio in the Bahamas, but the producer was Barry Beckett and another man named Jerry Wexler, who were connected with the Muscle Shoals recording studio in Alabama, or I don't know if that's the name of the studio, but it's in Muscle Shoals. It's either the Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and that's where the studio is, or it's called the Muscle Shoals Studio and it's somewhere in Alabama. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Muscle Shoals, and then somewhere along the line, Bob Dylan was introduced. Someone played Sultans of Swing for him, and he kind of liked what he heard, and so Mark Knopfler was approached to be involved in Bob Dylan's album "Slow Train Coming" as a session musician, and that was recorded at the Muscle Shoals studio in Alabama. So a lot of stuff was happening. The initial album, the first album with Sultan of Swings on it, had a bunch of other good songs on it. It's a very high quality album in my opinion. Songs like Down to the Waterline, Water of Love, Setting Me Up, Wild West End. It's just a solid quality album. And the second album, called Communique, was it was not, I don't think it was quite as strong as the first album, but it had some great songs on it. There were some songs on side 2 of Communique, Lady Writer, Angel of Mercy, Single-Handed Sailor. Very good quality guitar music, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that the you take a look at the early formation of this band, and there's a couple things. First of all, and I'm sure that we're going to be talking a lot about this as we get into making movies and the side itself. But the power of Mark Knopfler as a guitar player and vocalist, which created it was a fresh sound, but it's also a very unique sound. You don't have to listen to too much Dire Straits music to know that it's Dire Straits music. They put together something, his vocals, his voice, along with his guitar is very unique. And an amazing guitar player. However, there's other aspects that really led to the launch of this band above and beyond that. Pick Withers had been in the music industry for a while. That's the drummer. And he'd played with like Dave Edmunds. He played with Jerry Rafferty. Prior to, he'd been a kind of an accomplished session artist before the formation of Dire Straits. And I think it's just one of those things where even when you have a band of incredible talent, it really helps to have some connection in the industry. And these little encounters, like you talked about with Bob Dylan, he ended up seeing them when they were on their U.S. tour, and they start to work together. These type of connections really drive, powerful things that can help make great albums, which I think that we end up seeing as we move through Dire Straits time. So really interesting story.
Well, and I don't know off the top of my head, who was involved in the production of the first album. It was recorded in England, I assume in London somewhere. I don't know those details off the top of my head, but because of the success of the first album, they were able to get, and I believe it was before, Communique was definitely recorded before Slow Train Coming. And so, Mark Knopfler had gotten hooked up with these producers that were connected to Muscle Shoals in Alabama, I believe before his connection with Dylan. But the timing doesn't necessarily matter, because it was, the success gave them greater opportunity to work with a producer, with a little more substance, I assume, than whoever it was. And the sound, the difference in sound between the first album and the second album, it's there. I think that come making movies, they sort of expanded the sound even more. But there's, the sound on the first album, very economical. I don't want to say it's sparser. There's drums, bass, and 2 guitars is the style on the first album, and it's just there's a little more body to the music. I believe there's some keyboard, more keyboards on the second album, and it just has a sound where there's not the same amount of space between the instruments, and that can be a good or a bad thing depending on who you ask or what type of music you're listening to. But it was a little more body to the music the second time around on Communique, and come making movies, Mark Knopfler was trying to identify someone to come in and help do whatever it was he was looking to do, and was connected through someone. I'm not sure how the connection was made, but to a man named Jimmy Iovine, who had been involved with, among others, Bruce Springsteen, and there are some similarities between Mark Knopfler and Bob Dylan in terms of vocal style and whatnot. And I think there are also some similarities between Mark Knopfler and Bruce Springsteen in terms of the type of stories he wanted to tell, the way he wanted to present himself both musically and thematically. And so that was an appropriate find, and it may have been the underlying motivation for Mark Knopfler approaching Jimmy Iovine. But in any case, the Making Movies, the third album, which came out in 1980, was produced by Mark Knopfler and Jimmy Iovine, and Roy Bittan, who played and maybe still does, plays piano in the E Street Band, with Bruce Springsteen. And so there's just a little bit more of a kind of a Springsteen texture and flavor that was brought to this album, with Springsteen's own keyboard player being one of the session musicians. I don't know if he played on every song, but he certainly played on some of the songs. So the just going in to create this third album, and I think there's one aspect before we continue to move forward. On the first two albums, the second guitarist was David Knopfler, Mark Knopfler's brother. And in between Communique and the release of Making Movies, I believe there was some just sort of disagreement or, not a lack of being on the same page between Mark Knopfler and his brother. And so David ended up leaving the band. I'm not aware that there was any, inordinate vitriol or trouble between the brothers or anything like that. But he left the band, and so the core of the band was for purposes of Making Movies was Mark Knopfler himself, and then John Ilsley on bass and Pick Withers drumming with Roy Bittan. There may be some other players. I believe there was another guitarist who's not credited on the album that was involved as well. But
I just talking about the people involved with the making of this movie. I mean, you talked a little bit about what Jimmy Iovine had been working with in the past. I mean, this guy was a player and an influencer in the music industry. I mean, and whether this is your beat or not. I mean, he was instrumental in the financing and the founding of Death Row Records. He was instrumental in the signing of Tupac Shakur for recording. He worked very closely with Dr. Dre. He initially signed early artists like Snoop Dogg, and was the original signer of Lady Gaga as well. So I mean, this person was very, not only had he been beforehand, but he remained very important in the music industry. And I think it just, again, goes to show how some of these connections and these ability to latch on to some of these influential people can really turn into a great result on an album like we're seeing here.
Yeah. And I think that's true. And the different types of artists that you kind of listed off there show a certain versatility
because there's also like Tom Petty and Damn the Torpedoes. He worked on that album, Bad Out of Hell. But again, a number of different things, both kind of in and out of the genre of of classic rock or album oriented rock or whatever we want to call it.
All of it pretty successful.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, in any case, I've got the album cover here. Very simple album cover. It's just a red with a light blue strip on the back. You know, they list the songs along the top. We can see them there, and then the album sleeve on the inside. It's got a picture of the band and the lyrics. Pretty straightforward as far as album covers go. There's no gatefold. Just pretty straightforward. Kind of let the music do the talking. And side one, the first side is what we're going to talk about today. And the opening track on side one is called "Tunnel of Love," and this was well before Bruce Springsteen. He recorded his own song called "Tunnel of Love," and there's a little bit of overlap between the lyrics of the songs, but there's no question that this song is Springsteen-esque.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's no question that it's Dire Straits. It starts out with this sort of carnival-like organ music, but then that Mark Knopfler guitar comes in, and you know that you're listening to Dire Straits. And, while there may be some similarities between Mark Knopfler and Bob Dylan in terms of his manner of singing, I don't think you can draw the same comparison with Bruce Springsteen, at least in terms of the sound of Mark Knopfler's voice. But in my initial reaction to this song is that it is Springsteen-esque, and it is really, it's the lyrics are describing. I mentioned the carnival-like organ. The lyrics are consistent with a carnival. I mean, in Bruce Springsteen's song "Tunnel of Love," they're talking about taking your girl, to the carnival and going on the tunnel of love. And that's really what this song is about as well. I mentioned earlier that Mark Knopfler grew up near Newcastle in northern England, and the lyrics in the song make reference to it's like the Spanish city to me when we were kids. And at one point he talks about to rock away from Colorscoat to Whitley Bay, and those were neighborhoods or towns, kind of suburbs of Newcastle. Whitley Bay was on the North Sea, south of Blythe and east of Newcastle, and Colorscoat was a neighborhood that was east of Newcastle, near the North Sea. And there was a place in Whitley Bay called the Spanish City, and it was a carnival.
Yeah.
Where they had carnival rides. And so there's really no and that's what it's about. And the imagery is there, waltzers, six-blade switchback, torture tattoo, talking about kind of the tattooed carnival guys.
Yep.
And, riding on a ghost train where the cars scream and slam. I mean, he's talking about carnival rides. And the imagery is not real direct, but it's also, it's pretty clear what's being talked about, and he meets a girl at the carnival and is, trying to, do what he's going to do. And, the parts of the lyrics where they say, and the big wheel keeps on turning, neon burning up above. Well, probably talking about the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
And then, but, I'm just high on the world, but come on and take a low ride with me, girl, on the tunnel of love. And so that's sort of like, okay, we're up on the top of the Ferris wheel. Let's kind of buy a ticket and get into the boat and go into the tunnel in the dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just to sum it up. I mean, it really is, you're out at the carnival looking for someone, you meet someone, and it sort of maintains appropriate ambiguity as to what exactly happens. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward lyrically, and musically, it kind of has that it changes style during the song. Not unlike some Springsteen songs where there's these sort of guitar based rockin' parts, and then it kind of changes tempo and mood to go kind of back before a climax and whatnot. And the song is pretty near 8 minutes long. It's not overly long. I mean, it was played on the AOR stations, when this first came out. But really, in my opinion, a very strong opener, kind of consistent with what he was apparently looking for, which was, I believe, Springsteen-esque, but still, it definitely sounded like Dire Straits.
Oh, absolutely, and it starts out, that organ music. Not only is it circus like or carnival like, but it also has an air of an older time, which is kind of like a flashback to when you were younger and you went to the carnival. Maybe this was an experience that he's recalling and remembering when he was younger. It's this olden times or golden age is what I think of when I first hear that. And then it does kick in with Dire Straits. I would 100% agree that this has a Springsteen type feel to it, but the sound is 100% Dire Straits, that unique sound of theirs. And it kicks right in. I have a difficult time. I mean, there's songs that people refer to as like a foot tapper, but this song I have a hard time figuring out what to do with my hands. I almost want to be kind of like punching while I'm listening to the song. It's got just a quick, very solid, steady pushing kind of beat to it. Great song when you're getting up in the morning, kind of getting ready. It's got that push kind of feel to it. Yet at the same time, I think he's talking about something that is really kind of emotional. That you meet somebody at the carnival, and you're really kind of connecting and getting that bond kind of before you even know the other person's name. You've got this feeling of coming together, and kind of like it doesn't get a whole lot better than that moment as you realizing I'm into this girl and she seems to be into me, and we're at this carnival, and we're things are progressing. It's really kind of a cool song and a cool concept, and like I said, it moves along with that Dire Straits sound.
The well, and the kind of seeing being out in a social environment, and which in the context of this song is out at the carnival, and you're a young person, you're looking, if you're a young guy, you're looking for a girl.
Yeah.
And the kind of you see the kind of like seeing the woman in the crowded hazy bar sort of thing. Yep. Except it's the environment is the carnival. And when he meets the girl and she said, "You are the perfect stranger," she said, "Baby, let's keep it like this." Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of kind of that, yeah, let's we can do a little dance, but let's keep the boundaries up. Is this what you get there? But the guy is yearning for something with a little more permanence, and so kind of the hearkening back to a simpler, easier time where it was easier to know where you stand with those around you. It is. There's a lot of layered emotions in a song that's talking about something that's fairly simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
Which is something that Springsteen was able to do. He was able to tell stories in his songs that worked on multiple levels. But with that, it may have had a common theme. He was like, driving, getting out, getting away, something new, with not always the most optimistic but always kind of a hopeful, don't give up kind of ethos behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I don't know if this song kind of rises to the level of some of Springsteen's more elaborate narratives in some of his songs, uh, uh, but it nevertheless it tells a story that operates on multiple levels and kind of sums up what you were describing about that harkening back to a bygone era, but also looking towards plying one's trade in the here and now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the power of not just this song, but most Dire Straits songs. When you think about a lot of Bruce Springsteen songs, there's a very powerful and memorable, but very simple, chorus type line. A song like "Born to Run," right? That the word that chorus is easy to remember and it really stands out. The lyrics and the way that Dire Straits songs move, there just isn't that real memorable stop and sing along type part of this song. The song just continues to move along, and there's something about the way that Mark Knopfler's voice just intertwines with his guitar that is the real appealing thing, and it can continue to just move on without having to stop to have that one point that everybody sings along, like in a lot of Springsteen songs. The lyrics are easy to understand. I'm not saying that you can't pick out the lyrics in it, but they just continue to kind of flow without stopping and starting points, unless they're going to fade into a little bit of Knopfler's guitar. And they do that so well, and this is a great example of that, I think.
The and uh the like kind of like the outro of the song, where he goes back to the "and girl, it looks so pretty to me like it always did, just like the Spanish city when we were kids."
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear that Roy Bittan piano and kind of that outgoing guitar solo,
Mm-hmm.
where you could, the sort of thing that in concert could go on forever.
Yeah.
And the and there's actually a very good version of this. There's a DVD version of with music and video that is basically the album that was released, Alchemy, which was a live album that was released in the early '80s, and it came out after Love Over Gold, which was the fourth album, that was released in 1982 after Making Movies. But it has a lot of material from Making Movies, including a live version of this song, and it's got video from a
Mm-hmm.
concert. It may have been taken from multiple concerts, but in London in 1983, and he was able to take this song and recreate it live, and it kind of had that, in my opinion, that sort of Springsteen-esque sort of
Mm-hmm.
epic tale of rock and roll youth. And the I'm not sure exactly what Knopfler was referring to, but Rockaway, Rockaway,
Mm-hmm.
he says a lot. He mentions some specific places in England. I don't know what Rockaway refers to. I mean, there's Rockaway Beach, which is in New York. I mean, that's in New York
Mm-hmm.
City. I think it's actually part of Queens. Forever memorialized in the Ramones song.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if he's referring to that or if and there's a boardwalk on Rockaway Beach, not unlike Atlantic City or Asbury Park type thing. And
Mm-hmm.
if that's some Springsteen connection, I haven't been able to track down what that's talking about. But it's uh, that's an example of when I talked about ambiguity, enough ambiguity in the song as to what exactly is going on. Uh, and so I'd be curious to know what exactly he was thinking. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just another little detail about this song, which makes it a great opening track on this album. a great Dire Straits song, and really established that this album was a step forward for the band,
Mm-hmm.
and that they were continuing to grow. And Mark Knopfler was taking good advantage of the opportunities that had come to him, given the success of Dire Straits up to that point.
Sure, sure. Now, what do you think? It seems to me that at the end of this song, that he's that like early on, as you talked about, it's like, look, this is it. Let's not get serious here. Let's enjoy this night. And they have this night, and they part without ever knowing who they are. But it seems like at the end, you talk about, it. He ends with. And now I'm searching through these carousels in the carnival arcades, searching everywhere from steeplechase to Palisades. I mean, it seems like he almost spends his time later on looking for this girl again. Like he goes back to these parks to see if he can find her again. And the places remind him, excuse me, of the way they did when they were kids. But it seems like he kind of goes the rest of his life maybe wishing they hadn't been so anonymous.
Well, I mean, I guess I agree with you that that's what he's talking about when he's referring to I'm searching through these carousels and carnival arcades, in the shooting gallery when promises were made. It's sort of you ran into someone in a place just by happenstance, and then if you just kind of keep going back there and looking, and maybe she'll show up again. That certainly appears to be what he's talking about. And as far as I think clearly he wishes that there wasn't that wall that was put up, because the initial encounter, you look like the perfect stranger. Let's keep it like this. She took off a silver locket. She said, "Remember me by this." She put her hand in my pocket. I got a keepsake and a kiss. So, kind of the transactional sort of liaison with a member of the opposite sex. Not to say, not transactional in the money changing hands sort of way, but he didn't necessarily want it to. He didn't want that boundary to be there. He wanted to be able to continue it. I don't. There's no reason to disagree about that.
Yeah.
And the fact that he refers to the just like the Spanish city to me when we were kids. I just think that refers. I think that refers to he preferred it when things were more simple, and maybe less transactional.
Don't we all?
Oh yeah. So great. I think it's a great song. I think it's a very strong Mark Knopfler composition, and a great start to a great side on making movies. Absolutely. Moving right along, there are only 3 songs on the side, and the second song, which is, I believe it's about 6 minutes long, but it's the shortest song on the side. One of Dire Straits' better or more well-known songs, I guess is what I meant to say, Romeo and Juliet. And as you can imagine, for a song called Romeo and Juliet, it is a song about a doomed relationship. At least from Romeo's perspective, and it starts out with this just wonderful guitar playing on a and it's played on a national steel guitar. And I wouldn't have necessarily known that, but in 1985, September of 1985, I got to see Dire Straits perform live. It was a fantastic concert. It was the Brothers in Arms tour, and I hadn't heard any of the material on Brothers in Arms.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first time I heard a lot of the material from that album was at that concert. But they played a lot of material from their earlier albums, including making movies, and they played Romeo and Juliet. And at the beginning, when Mark Knopfler, one of the roadies, comes out with this metal, shiny steel National guitar, and then when he starts plucking the opening notes to Romeo, it was it was just a beautiful moment at the concert. Everybody got quiet, so it's just a really distinctive, very poignant opening for the song. And I mentioned him sort of plucking the guitar strings on this National guitar. Mark Knopfler has a very distinctive finger picking style of playing the guitar, and I read somewhere on the internet that that may in part have to do with the fact that at some point when he was younger, or before he was in dire straits, there was a warped instrument that was the only guitar available at a place he was living or staying or something like that. And in order to play it, he had to do things differently than you normally would playing a guitar. And the method that he figured out to play this warped instrument sort of led him to this what became a very distinctive finger picking style of playing the guitar. But it certainly came in handy for the intro to Romeo and Juliet. And the lyrics start out: a love-struck Romeo sang the streets a serenade, laying everybody low with a love song that he made. Finds a street light and steps out of the shade and says something like, "You and me, babe, how about it?" I mean, very, very simple. And then Juliet responds. It's like, "Oh, it's Romeo. You nearly gave me a heart attack." He's underneath the window. She's singing, "Hey la, my boyfriend's back." You shouldn't come around here singing up at people like that. Anyway, what you gonna do about it? So, he's underneath the window. You've got Romeo, speaking his love poems to Juliet up on the balcony. So it's maybe a little schmaltzy, but when you listen to the song, and particularly when I saw it performed live, it's just a very compelling, just a guy, "Hey, you and me, babe, how about it?" And it's like, well, what are you going to do?
Yep. I again, another example of I love songs where you can really pay attention to the lyrics, to the story that they're telling, and Mark Knopfler sings in a way that's absolutely the case. As I said, he's got a very unique voice, and as you just explained, I mean, it's his style of playing the guitar is very unique, and whether it's luck or intention or whatever, the two of those very unique things play together so well, because while you're listening to him, him sing these lyrics, and he does just a great job of bringing in the emotion to what they're saying, but you're able to pay attention to the guitar, that picking as well, and it just flows so well. And this song, there's some sadness that is to it, but it tells a great story. And I mean, I have never had the opportunity to see Dire Straits live. I can imagine the moment that you're talking about, where he puts this guitar down and he just starts out picking it as it does in the beginning of this song. And for those of you out there that'll listen to this, that's probably a good vision to have in your head as the song starts, of just picturing this guy with this shiny, steel guitar up there, playing this, maybe just a spotlight on him, and the rest of the stage is dark. And then I can just imagine it. It must have been really great to see it live, but it flows that way, just listening to it as well. And it certainly is a neat story.
The there's a reference to the movie song at multiple points during the song, and that I believe refers to the song "Somewhere" from West Side Story, which is based,
On Romeo
that's
and
based
Juliet.
on Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
So I mean that's not rocket science, but that Juliet, the dice was loaded from the start, and I bet, in other words, I took the bet, and you exploded into my heart, and I forget the movie song. When you're going to realize it was just that the time was wrong. Now that's, there's nothing particularly profound about that. I mean, because bad timing is the reason for a lot of failed romances. And as the song goes on, we both came up on different streets, but they were both streets of shame, both dirty, both mean, and the dream was just the same. To go on to something better. I dreamed your dream for you, and now your dream is real. How can you look at me as if I was just another one of your deals? So it's another story about a guy meets a girl, and they come together for a brief period, and then the girl wanted things to stay a certain distance from each other, and that's not the way he wanted it.
Yeah.
And the suggestion being that if only we'd met at a different time, or if only this had blah blah blah. I mean, and let's face it. I mean, timing was pretty important in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Because Romeo showed up, and Juliet was unconscious because she'd taken this for 48 hours. Seem like you're dead. And that Romeo didn't know about that. And so if he'd showed up just a little before, or just a little after,
later.
But instead he killed himself, and then she woke up from the potion, realized what had happened, and then she killed herself. Bad timing can screw things up.
Can cause problems. I think it's an interesting kind of clash with the lyrics that you just talked about, how they both came from, let's say they both came from shady, from a lower position, which is obviously opposite from in Romeo and Juliet, where, the families in that were in higher positions, and their relationship actually ended up dragging them down. Where you have people that start in a lower position, and certainly in this guy's mind, the man's part of the relationship here, the man singing, that it was this relationship that was lifting him up, which is, and then the relationship didn't end. It continued on, unlike in Romeo and Juliet, where, they never got past the lovey-dovey stuff in their relationship to the difficult things, and in a lot of cases, potentially a split. So there are some differences in the stories themselves that they're telling, but underlying is the fact that you had two people that at one point, had this relationship that was certainly very important to the man.
Well, and they came up on different streets, but they were both streets of shame, both dirty, both mean. The dream was just the same. So it's like they're from the same neighborhood, and then later in the song, so now you just say, "Oh, Romeo, yeah, I used to have a scene with him." It's sort of like they're still hanging around in the same places, in the same neighborhood, and so Romeo is constantly reminded of this failed romance, and he has the memories of the time they spent together, and it's a fairly genuine cry of love. He says, Juliet, when we made love, you used to cry. You said, I'll love you like the stars above. I'll love you till I die. There's a place for us. The movie song. It's a the guy was head over heels in love with the girl. Yep. And she wasn't in love with him. Now,
she just wasn't that into him.
And there are, as you and I think, can both attest, there's plenty of guys out there in this world that have experienced exactly
Yes.
what Romeo is talking about.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's a I believe that it was the first single off of this album, and I don't have a thorough recollection of what other songs were released as singles. There were songs you heard on the radio,
Yeah.
like on WAPL in Appleton when it came out. But it's a very strong love song, and a little schmaltzy, maybe. But I think that the genuineness of the singing and the musical accompaniment rises it above kind of the schmaltzy
Yeah.
sort of love songs that you sometimes hear from rock artists. And at the end, where he kind of comes back to and he says something like, "You and me, babe, how about it?" And the song starts to fade out. "You and me, babe, how about it?" And then there's this guitar line to close out the song, and that's played on a regular electric guitar, and I can remember that from the concert because he he took off the National guitar, and one of the roadies brought out a regular Stratocaster type electric guitar, and he started playing those notes, and it just has a longing, whether it's a longing for things to change or just a melancholy acceptance of the fact that it's not going to, or a combination of both. It's just a beautiful way to end the song, and so it just there's more complexity to it than just a failed love song, and I think that's reflected both in the lyrics and in the musical presentation.
Again, to me, another just great example of how well his guitar just interweaves with his lyrics and the story. It just he just does such a great job. Great example here.
So Romeo and Juliet, which precedes the third and final song on the side, Skate Away. Now, Skate Away was on the radio when this album came out, and I don't know whether it was a single that was making its way onto top 40 type stations, or whether was hearing it on WAPL, the AOR station. But at the beginning of the song, it starts out with a very distinctive drum sound, and I don't know exactly what sort of echo or delay effect they were using, but it's got a very unique, very interesting drum sound to it. And then some keyboards come in, and then you can hear Mark Knopfler's guitar. And you say, okay, this is Dire Straits, all right. And lyrically, I think it's pretty straightforward what this song is about. It's about a woman, a young woman who lives in the city somewhere. There's not language that suggests London or New York or whatever, but lives in the city and rides around on roller skates with what in those days would have been called a Walkman, listening to music and doing her thing, living in her own world. No fear alone at night. She's sailing through the crowd. In her ears, the phones are tight and the music's playing loud. Pretty straightforward. And, later on in the lyrics, where he sings, she used to have to wait around. She used to be the lonely one. But now that she can skate around town, she's the only one. So, which that suggests that here is a woman who, has been hurt and has decided that she's going to rely on herself rather than others.
She's going to make herself happy before she worries about someone else making her happy.
Yeah. And she gets rock and roll in a rock and roll station and a rock and roll dream. She's making movies on location. She don't know what it means. And the music make her want to be the story. And the story was whatever was the song, what it was. Roller Girl, don't worry. DJ plays the movies all night long. And so just kind of living in her own world, expressing herself by, skating in and out of traffic in this urban environment. And there was a music video made for this song. And I mean, this was, I think actually, because this album was released before MTV premiered. So this would have been in the early days. And I mean, you can find it on YouTube. But it's pretty bad.
They were putting a lot of production money into videos back in those times.
It's pretty bad. But the song is excellent, and it captures the mood, and the singer, Mark Knopfler, he's sort of chuckling at just how this girl has just created something for herself. And he says she's got her own world in the city. You can't intrude on her. No. She's got her own world in the city. The city's been so rude to her. And so the guy's like, hey, hats off to you for figuring out a way to make things work for yourself. And, this was in the days before rollerblades. They didn't really become popular until a little later than when this came out. And but I don't know, it was, I can remember from where I very first heard this song on the radio. You listen to the song once or twice and you know exactly what it's about. And it's that drumming, and the beat is just it's a unique song. And it's hard for me to think off the top of my head of another song like it, either by Dire Straits or by anybody else. But, you hear it, you very quickly know it's Dire Straits, you listen to it, it conjures up a very clear image in your mind of what the song is about. And I don't know, I think it's a great way to close out the side. And it's another longer song. I think Tunnel of Love is a little bit longer, but it's like a 7-minute and some song, and you get some bottom end guitar towards the end, not screechy, but
I mean, but the whole song moves along, and it's kind of like the lyrics keep coming at you. You can almost feel this that you're moving, these kind of the whole roller skating thing from verse to chorus to, I mean, it moves at you kind of in a continuous flow, which again, I've said this a couple times, but I really believe this, just intertwines so well with the guitar that is playing. So it sounds good. It's an upbeat, moving song. It makes you feel that this girl, this woman is happy in doing what she wants, and happy by herself. And this idea that, well, I mean, women, if they're going to be happy, they should be out there finding a boyfriend, or out there doing a job or something like that. And it's like, no, I'm just here doing my own thing right now and enjoying it, and really kind of liberating.
Well, and I definitely agree with the fact that it's not a, like, for example, Simon and Garfunkel, I Am a Rock.
Yeah.
It's someone who's been hurt and has decided they're just going to retreat. I have my books and my poetry to protect me. If I'd never loved, I never would have cried. Whereas there's none of that here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that's observing this girl and sort of taking note with approval. and kind of you go girl, for lack of a better way of putting it. And back in in 1980 when this song came out, I mean, nowadays you see people and with earbuds and music on their phone and whatnot. It's very common. But back in 1980, you didn't, it wasn't as regular a thing for people to always have headphones on and be listening to music when they were just moving around in public. That was a relatively new thing. And I mean, you had your big Koss headphones at home that you could plug into the stereo and sit there and listen to Dark Side of the Moon or Frankenstein or whatever it was and kind of get those effects. But the idea of just being out and about in public listening to music just wasn't that common. But at the same time, you knew what the song was. You knew what the singer was talking about with the music. The phones are tight and the music's playing loud. It was pretty clear.
Well, and the what you did have back at that time were people walking around with boom boxes. Okay, and a boom box is when you're walking around with a boom box, you are inviting the people around you to come dance with you, listen to the music. Isn't this fun? Let's dance, let's party, let's have a beer, whatever. Boombox, the people around you, it's an invitation. Whereas, and you're absolutely right, you didn't see a whole lot of this back then, but it started to come out more as the Walkman became more popular and that type of thing. Headphones indicates, no, I'm not looking to involve any of you around here in this experience. I am enjoying myself doing exactly what I'm doing by myself. Don't take it personal. This is just what I'm doing, right? And what I want to do. It isn't just the notion of headphones doesn't invite that invitation of people around you, and also kind of a public statement as well. And I'm sure there's plenty of women around out there not wearing headphones that are constantly being tapped on the shoulder by men, seeing, do you want, can I buy you a drink? Can I buy you that? And they wish they could just be left alone. And this lady, this girl achieved it. And again, to your point, good for her.
Yeah. So, and like at the end of the song, it was slipping and a sliding. Life's a rollerball, slipping and a sliding. Skate away. That's all. So, shala, chalet, yay, yay, skate away. So it's a great song, and I think that and Dire Straits has a number of great albums, and a number of great sides, and I think that arguably this is one of, if not the best, that Dire Straits has to offer. So Dire Straits Making Movies, Side 1. Check it out.
Thanks, Mike. Great side, great conversation. We will talk to you next time.
Sounds good.